Welcome back to Endurance Capital. Today's episode is about something many people admire, but really too few understand properly, and that's sustained high performance. Not one breakthrough, not one perfect day, not one exceptional result, but the system that allows someone to perform at the highest level again and again. And in doing so, discover that their limits were further away than they once believed. My guest today is Chrissie Wellington, four-time Ironman World Champion, one of the most extraordinary athletes endurance sport has ever seen. A woman who didn't just win. She built a way of performing that kept expanding what seemed possible. What makes this episode especially interesting is that it is not only about races, it is about life, about the system behind top performance, about what sport can teach us about resilience, structure, self belief, and going beyond what we thought was possible to us. And about how those lessons apply just as much to founders, chief executives, and anyone trying to build at a high level over a long period of time. So, the question today is this: how is sustained top performance possible? And what can bring high performance teach us about going beyond our limits in life and at work? I'm Ignacio Garcia, early stage investor and endurance triathlete, and this is Endurance Capital. Let's get into it. Hey, Ricky, welcome back to Endurance Capital. It's a real privilege to have you here.
Oh,
Your career is extraordinary, so thank you for joining us.
thank you so much for having me.
When you look back now, what do you think really enabled your success, not just physically, but also as a system? What were those foundations that allowed you to perform at the level for so long?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me and what a what a great first question to start off with. I've been percolating a lot on the meaning of success. Is it trophies? Is it medals? Is it something else? And to me, the system is the success. It's far less about the medals. That's the kind of sparkly manifestation of success that many see. But designing the system, a resilient system, a system that enables you to not only perform once, but to perform under pressure over time, navigating, building, living that system is my definition of success. Um, and also when I look back at my life journey, I think Steve Jobs said it best, that it's only in the rearview mirror that you can see how the dots join. And so it's now looking in the rearview mirror, having lived almost 50 years, that I can look back and see how the dots joined. And my life has been about so much more than sport. So when people look at the public persona, they see sporting success. But for me, I've achieved success in many different areas of my life, some of which have been related to sport, many of which haven't. But I can also start to map that system and think about what enabled me to perform in many different areas of my life over time, not just sport. And I think, maybe we can just touch on a few of those. I think the first one is having that anchor of purpose, having that personal mission, that North Star that guides me. And that's important in an operational, organizational context, very important in a personal context. What matters to me? What is my mission in life? What am I here to do? A quite profound question, but I think so important to know your personal mission. Then the process of exploration, being curious enough to think about what might be possible, and then having the courage to take those steps, often out of your comfort zone when the outcome is uncertain. And I think when you have that courage to explore, then you're able to define your goals. And goals can be outcome focused, glittery medals and trophies and records, but they can also be process
But that's the
driven.
mental part, not Chrissy. That's the mental part. But you need a body to sustain that, right?
You need to design a system to sustain your pursuit of the goal. So the system is multifaceted. So it involves, for me, let's have a laser sharp focus here on sport. So for me, my system involved having the goal, the outcome goal, but then you need process goals, and that process goal is manifested in a plan, in a training plan. So that can be an hourly plan, or it can be a yearly plan. And that plan is iterative. So there's that feedback loop that's necessary in order to be able to iterate and build on that plan. So you need that training program. You need guardrails. You need cultural guardrails. How am I going to act? How am I going to show up? How am I going to behave? And then you have the policy guardrails that are so important in sport. What are the rules? What are the anti-doping procedures? So you've got those two types of guardrails. Same in an organization. You have to have both. You have to know who you are as an athlete, how you want to show up as an athlete, but you have to operate within a system, within the systemic guardrails of sport. Then you need to curate an environment that's conducive to success. So designing a system is about designing an environment. We're products of our environment, and by environment, I mean, yes, our structural environment. Do I have a swimming pool? Do I have roads to ride on?
Yeah.
Have I got healthy food in my fridge? My structural environment, but also my personal environment in the people that I surround myself with. So my system is both structural, and my system relates to the people that I have around me. So I think that those are some really important facets of the system that I created. And then you move on to execution, and that involves consistency with agility. It involves pacing. It involves that circular feedback loop, that iteration. If I look back and what I've seen as a life that has been so multifaceted and branched like a tree, I can actually, I think when I look in retrospect, I can map that process. But that process doesn't just apply to sport. It can apply to all areas of our life.
Yeah, I agree.
It enabled me to thrive in sport. It enabled me to be my personal best in a sporting context. But it's enabling me to be my personal best in other areas of life too.
Yeah, but a lot of people think confidence comes first, but often it seems to be built through action, right? Preparation and boring repetition, those 50-meter laps in the pool. But how did confidence actually get built on your career?
Oh, it's such an interesting question, isn't it? I wrote a LinkedIn post about this the other day, because I think there's a misconception that every professional athlete or business founder has this kind of chest thumping confidence.
No.
They're the Michael Jordans that, manifest it, believe it, think they can achieve it, and go on to do so. Some have that, but many don't, and I'm a case in point. So for me, as you alluded to, confidence has been highly iterative. I like to say it's built in the trenches of experience. So you need enough confidence and support around you to take the first step. You take the first step, you explore what's possible physically, psychologically, and so your confidence grows. And failure doesn't always mean success builds confidence. Failure can build confidence because you realize in those setbacks, in those moments of adversity, that you're stronger than maybe you thought possible. So those psychological limiters maybe are challenged, and you can draw on those memory banks to give you confidence. So for me, yeah, confidence was highly iterative. And when I did my first World Championships, my outcome goal was top 10 finish. I was encouraged by my coach to very much focus on the process and not the outcome. Focus on the process, focus on the execution. But I wasn't confident that I could win the race, and yet I did. I did because I had a system. I did because I focused on execution. And once I'd won, yeah, I felt a sense of imposter syndrome and used that to empower me. But after that, then my confidence grew about my capability.
Yeah. But what I'm hearing from you is something that matters enormously in startups, in business too, because the strongest founders are leaders, and leaders are rarely the ones who can produce one burst of brilliance, right? They are the ones who build systems that let them keep producing, learning, and adapting over time. So that system is absolutely spot on. I love it.
Yeah, it's iterative, and it's about taking action despite a lack of clarity. There's never full clarity about an outcome or a process, but you've got to take that step. Then you've got to inbuilt the feedback mechanism, both the internal feedback mechanism. How am I feeling? How was my effort? Am I tired? Did that go well? What's my heart rate doing? And then that external feedback where you elicit feedback from others, because we all have blind spots, right? Help me see what I can't see. Internal intuitive feedback, there's the external feedback, there's the data assimilation, then you've got the horizon scanning, and then you iterate and evolve, and some things work, some things don't work.
Easy to say, difficult to execute. I keep seeing founders that don't perceive success without burnout. So imagine a champion that does not perceive success without burnout.
Yes, but that speaks to the most important foundation of any high performance system, and that's health. Health is foundational. So if our life is a pie, right? And it's made up of different slices. It's made up of work, it's made up of family, it's made up of social life and hobbies and education. Health is the crust. Without the crust, everything disintegrates, so we need health as a foundation. But I think you speak to the concept of limits, right? Because success isn't about constantly defying limits. It's about understanding limits. So we have structural limits, our energy, our time, our capacity, that have to be respected. Those structural limits have to be respected. And if we constantly defy them, then the system breaks down. Whereas you have other limits that can be challenged and can be defied, and the edges can be pushed slowly outwards. So I think the most effective leader doesn't just have a kind of no limits philosophy.
Yeah.
They understand the different types of limits, whether they're structural, psychological, developmental, my capabilities, for example. And you're able to differentiate, and you're able to push, learn, adapt, evolve, depending on the outcome of action. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about you, Chrissie. Our audience would love to hear more about you. One of the reasons why I think your career resonates so strongly is that it seemed to keep expanding what was possible. How do you think about limits now, and where they were real or fixed boundaries for you? Were they flexible at that point?
I published my autobiography in 2012 and called it A Life Without Limits.
Yeah.
Because sport taught me that my physical and psychological limits were not where I thought they were. So sport gifted me the opportunity to test, challenge myself, and explore the extent of my capabilities. And that's a real gift, you know, to be able to explore your potential, exceed your potential. But I just go back to what I said before. There are different types of limits. So I'm talking about psychological limits. What am I capable of? Right? I was able to challenge that and defy that. I never thought I was capable of 4 world championship victories. So my psychological limit was not where I thought. And my developmental limit was not where I thought. My skills, my experience, my resilience, I was able to build that. I was able to learn and grow in a way that I never thought that I could. So I explored my developmental limits. But those structural limits, you have to respect them. It's not about constant self-flagellation and defying the limits of your body in terms of sleep, in terms of rest, in terms of cognitive load, because otherwise there are trade-offs, right? And we have to be mindful of those trade-offs. And the times when I have tried to push those limits, I've broken. There's a subtle difference in how I conceive limits. And there are some that you can really push. And there are some, I think, that come with trade-offs, like sleep, for example, you know, recovery. How much am I willing to push that? And what trade-offs am I making by doing so?
Very relevant. I love what you're saying. So deep. But you decided to open the door to sport, right? Nobody opened the door to sport for you, and the door to sport was not open for you. So there is a point in life. Let's think about people that are going through life, and they need to open the door for that first exploration. And in your case, you decided to open the door for sport, and you decided to try. So I think there's a point in time where you have to think about, do I want to open that door? Do I have a purpose in life? Right?
I would say yes to a point. I was so blessed and fortunate to be surrounded by people, by an environment that enabled me to participate in sport recreationally and to participate in sport as a professional. Many, many people do not have that opportunity. So yes, I have agency and I can make the decision that I would like to do something, but I can only do that if I have an environment around me, one I've created or one I'm fortunate enough to be in, that enables me to pursue that dream.
You hit on another very relevant. So it's the combination of two, in my opinion. I don't know what you think. You know, you are who you surround with. If you don't have the environment and you don't have people around you that help you open the doors or expose you, then it's going to be more difficult for you to get inspired to do it on your own.
Yes, I think we have agency, and we need to exercise that and surround ourselves with people that can be uplifting and can be encouraging and supportive. That's so important. But so too is having an exploratory, curious mindset. You know, I never wanted to look back and think, what if? For me, that's the biggest failure of all, is not to act and to be left wondering. So I would I always have a curious mindset about opportunities or potential that I like to explore. So it's that calculating risk taking, that stepping slightly out of your comfort zone, to satisfy a curiosity, and then surrounding yourself with people that enable that to happen.
Yeah. Can you remember maybe, or take us through one race where you realized, you discovered that, yeah, there are no limits?
I can take you through two moments. The first one where I discovered where there were limits, and that was my third World Championships in 2010. And I woke up in the morning of the race and I just didn't feel well. I just didn't feel well enough to race. And I had to respect those limits, because sometimes I think strength is about understanding where those limits are. I think success is understanding where those limits are and making the best decision, both in the short term and the long term. So that was when I respected a different kind of limit. A year later, I raced the World Championships again. 2 weeks prior, I'd had a accident on my bike and I had quite severe burns, road rash all the way down my left side, and was in and out of hospital. My training was affected. I couldn't travel to the race until later. So, you know, physically, psychologically extremely disrupting. And, you know, there are strategies you go through in instances like this. And I got to the start line and focused again very much on execution and on the process, but never with an aspiration of winning, always with an aspiration of trying to complete the race. And I won my fourth World Championships that year, and I think in doing so realized that those physical and those psychological limits really weren't where I thought they were. And it also taught me another really important lesson. I think as athletes especially, we seek perfection, and we don't rest until we achieve it. But I realized that for me, perfection in that instance was bloody and tear-stained and riddled with setbacks. And that's what made that victory so perfect in my eyes. Precisely, I think, because of the setbacks, because of the adversity, because of the uncertainty around the race, it made that race so perfectly meaningful. And yeah, I think it completed me, and that's why I chose to retire, because I knew at that point that it epitomized me as an athlete.
Yeah, lots of things come to my mind, Chrissie, and I can visualize that moment. So what you're saying is, expose yourself. Don't get yourself hijacked by your mind when you have difficulties.
I'm saying endurance sport is as much psychological as it is physical, and the skill is to be able to understand all the signals that your body is telling you, physical and psychological, and differentiate what those that you should listen to and those that you shouldn't. And as an athlete, I became adept at quieting the voice that told me that something wasn't possible.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
And was able to challenge the the voice in your head that tells you to step aside, that tells you to give up, that tells you to slow down. And so I think it's the skill to be able to differentiate those signals and understand what's a real limit and what limit can be kind of more ephemeral and what one can be kind of pushed.
How would you help someone go beyond what they think is possible without drifting into fantasy or even self-destruction?
If I were a coach, would not be to convince people they can do anything. It would be to help them see more clearly what's possible, what the barriers are, what might be getting in the way, and what the next meaningful step looks like in order to be able to resolve them. So I think part of that involves challenging the assumptions, especially those fixed psychological assumptions around capabilities, and start to unpick them and examine them. Where do those fears, those habits, those beliefs come from? And is there an alternative reality where they don't exist? So I think as a coach, you play a facilitation role in enabling the athlete or the founder in your context to be able to see for them to see themselves and understand where their perceived limits are and to start to challenge those. But it also loops back here. You mentioned kind of self-destruction. It loops back to understanding what are the real limits, what are the structural limits, and what are the trade-offs from messing with those. Again, you know, the need for recovery, the need for sleep, the need for the health as a foundation. So what are the risks of challenging those limits as much as challenging the psychological ones?
What I'm hearing from you is something like this, that maybe one of the most valuable lessons for our audience, for founders, chief executives, Chrissie, you have to push yourself, you have to explore. And the question is not whether you feel limited. The question is whether you can build the systems, the habits, and the mindset that let you discover the limit is not where you really thought it was, right?
Yes, you need that inbuilt system to be able to act, to question, to set a goal, to act, and then to review and recalibrate and to learn from that. So yes, it's pushing the edges. It also requires a pause where you review internally, externally, and then recalibrate and understand, actually, is that limit real?
Yeah.
You know, is it fixed, or is there something further, you know, is someplace further I can go? So yeah, that exactly. It's about creating a system which enables you just to push the edge a little bit further each time, but then to pause and reflect. And I think also in our busy lives, where we celebrate busyness, we don't give ourselves space. We don't give ourselves space to think about, who am I? What matters to me? Where am I going? What have I learned? How can I improve? You know, that we just plow on, don't we? We just keep going and hope that we'll still get the same results. But sometimes I think we need that pause.
But the good news is that very soon, or as we speak, our agents will be able to do all the work for us, and we will have a lot of time to think about who we are.
Yes, but then life becomes less human, doesn't it? It's more about science than art. And the beauty of sport, I feel, is that it's still as much art as it is science. And when it becomes too much science and very little art, then I think it becomes less personal and less enjoyable. The fun is in the struggle. The fun is in the jeopardy and the uncertainty and the unknown, right? That's why we love sport.
Yeah, true.
You know, that's why I loved it. If the outcomes are given, no one's going to watch it.
Yeah.
So it's about testing and trialing and iterating and that element of jeopardy that we all love. If we think about that in our life context, then we're happier to step outside of the comfort zone, right?
Yeah.
If we don't need everything to be certain and carefully curated and picture perfect all the time, we're willing to take risks, push the edges, explore. We're not scared of failure because it's an opportunity to learn, right?
Yeah. Well, now a little bit of publicity for our partners. So this episode of Insurance Capital is brought to you by GetSky.com. One thing I've learned from athletes, coaches, chief executives, founders, everyone, is that understanding your own biology is the real unlock. And that's exactly what Stride helps you do. It doesn't matter if you're a world-class athlete or someone trying to understand how your body adapts when you train with intention. Stride brings you your sessions, your data, and your goals into one place, so you can actually see what's working and what isn't. If you're listening to Endurance Capital, you're already interested in doing things differently. So take a look at getstride.com and bring more clarity to how you train and how you operate day to day. Use coupon code trampoline and they'll give you a £100 off one and 30% off any other individual Stride tests or supplements. Let's carry on, Chrissie. High performance is one thing, but sustained high performance is another. What made your system sustainable enough to keep delivering so much over time?
I think it's a really important question because it's not about one peak. It's about that kind of sustained success, sustained performance, sustained execution over a long period of time. And I think for me, there's several facets. I think some of them I've touched on. So I think the first is that clarity of mission and purpose. So like I said, for an organization, for an individual, having that clarity of mission and purpose, that North Star, that anchor that doesn't change over time is really, really important. And then, so that provides your kind of why, and then you have the what underneath it. And the what are the goals. And again, they're iterative over time. You know, my goals changed from being a recreational triathlete to being a professional triathlete to trying and being an Olympian, and I failed at that, you know, to just completing the world championships, to winning the world championship. So it was an iterative process. Your goals need to develop and evolve over time. And then most importantly, sustained high performance requires that system, but not a static system. A system that has a plan and a strategy, but one that is responsive and is able to flex. So you need consistency, but paradoxically with agility. And then again, you need the guardrails, you need the environment that's conducive to success. So the system around you needs to be sustainable so that you can operate. Your performance can be sustainable over time, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. If sustained high performance is the goal, what does the system have to protect? What are the things that break first when people chase excellency that badly like you did?
Can I challenge that framing slightly?
Yeah.
So I don't think sustained high performance is the goal. because that implies an outcome.
Okay.
I just want to challenge that framing slightly, because I don't think sustained high performance is the goal. I think sustained high performance is the process. And I think if you optimize for an output, you see success, I think, as a kind of fixed end state, if that makes sense. So for me, it's less about that big shiny sparkly medal and more about whether a person or a team or an organization can remain aligned to their mission and goals under pressure. And that to me is what sustained high performance really means. What does an organization, if I remember rightly, your question was what does an organization need to protect? It needs to protect its mission and its purpose. It needs clarity around that. It needs to protect its guardrails. It needs to protect its health. All elements of psychological, physical, emotional, financial health. It needs to, and I think it also needs to protect identity flexibility, because if one's identity is solely linked to an outcome goal, it's inherently unstable. So sustained high performance means having an identity that is more spacious than just a single outcome goal. It's like in a sporting context.
Yeah.
If all that I am and all that I'll ever be is 4 world championship victories, and now I'm looking in the rearview mirror and that happened 15 years ago, that's an unstable platform on which to base my life.
Yeah.
So my own personal sustainable high performance has to be about so much more than a world championship victory.
Yeah. What I'm hearing from you is this. This is the same in company building and in startups. A business can survive short bursts of chaos, let's say, can win once. But if you want excellence to last, you really have to build a system that protects the foundations for that growth. That is true in sport, and it is true in any kind of leadership role.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think health is the most important foundation. Well, two: mission and purpose, and health. They have to be protected.
Yeah.
I think, to sustain that performance over time.
Yeah. If you were speaking directly, just put yourself in the mind of a founder. If you were speaking to a founder or a CEO trying to build something very difficult over a long period of time, what lessons from your high performance sport would you most want them to take seriously?
Mission and purpose, curiosity and exploration, iterative goals. You want to build something huge, you might not get there immediately, so play the long game and just take the first step. Curate an environment for success. I was the product of an incredible environment. I had amazing people around me, and I had a structural environment that enabled me to succeed. So it's not just about you, it's about the environment you create around you. Inbuild this review, reflect, recalibration loop at every step of the process. You know, as an athlete, I couldn't just do the same training day in, day out. There's always that internal and external review and recalibration. And I think organizationally, it's exactly the same. And I think lastly, make it more than you. I think sustainable high performance enables two things, actually. It enables you to achieve more than you ever think possible, but it enables you to do that for others. So I think we can all be a candle for someone else. So sustainable high performance isn't just about personal high performance. It's about paying that forward. It's about being the candle and elevating and empowering and inspiring others. And I think that's what makes it so impactful. Sport was such a gift for me because it was about so much more than me. And in an individual sport like triathlon, to be able to use my platform to uplift and inspire others enabled my own high performance, but also through that I was able to enable it in others, if that makes sense.
Yeah, really deep thoughts, Chrissie. What do you think success is really for, in essence? What should it give a person beyond the recognition and the proof?
Yeah, that, like I said, success is that sparkly manifestation, isn't it? An accolade or a trophy or a medal. But if you don't win, are you then a loser? Are you then unsuccessful? No, of course you're not. So for me, success is about the way in which a person shows up. Can I be successful at being a parent? Can I be successful in my voluntary work? Can I be successful at baking a cake or walking the dog? Yes, I can. It's how I do it. Do I show up with integrity, with authenticity? Do I give it my best effort? That's the true measure of success, because the winning element in sport is ephemeral. It fades. I'll always hold that accolade, and I take great pride in my sporting achievements. But I think the true success is the way in which those successes were earned.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
That's very deep what you're saying, Chrissie. And maybe the deeper lesson here is that high performance is not just about output, about the medal. It is about becoming the kind of person who can keep meeting challenges with structure, with composure, and belief. No, that is useful in sport, and it's useful in life itself, right? Yeah,
I think so, and it all comes back to the purpose. Are you living a life that matters to you? Are you doing the things that you care about? Are you having an impact beyond yourself? To me, that's true success. I look at my daughter, and I don't have a trophy for the parent that I am, but I'd like to think that my parenting is successful. And that doesn't mean that it's perfect, by the way. Just as in a sporting context, when you win or when you lose doesn't mean that everything went perfectly or everything went dreadfully. The success is, like you said so eloquently, is in how you show up.
Yeah. Well, we get into the part of the conversation that I enjoy the most. These are short questions and answers, so please be short. So one thing people get wrong about top performance.
I'm an endurance athlete. I don't give short answers, only long answers. They think it's all about the medals.
Okay, that's good enough. And one thing ambitious people should build earlier.
Sustainable health.
I love it. And now finish the sentence. You go beyond your limits when
you have courage and refuse to treat fear as the decision maker.
fantastic. And one word you would use to describe your relationship with winning today.
Detached. It's not that winning doesn't matter. It's just that I can't allow winning in that narrow sense to define who I am, because that's dangerous.
Yeah. And finally, question 5. What matters more in the long run? Confidence or consistency?
Consistency with agility. Consistency with agility. It's not just doing the same thing day out. It's being consistent in your flexibility as well.
Yeah. Okay, we got to the end. So my takeaway today is best performance and the best champion will not only show us what winning looks like, they show us how performance is built. So Chrissie, thank you for showing us that sustained excellence is not magic. It is a system of discipline, self-belief, support, and the willingness to keep discovering that you are capable of more than what you thought. And thank you so much for helping us decode what top performance actually rests on and why the lessons of elite sport matter far beyond race day. Before we wrap, a final note. If today's conversation opened something for you about performance, structure, confidence, or listening to your own biology, take a moment to explore getstride.com. Stride helps you make sense of your data, see how your body actually adapts, and bring more intention to your training and your life. And as a listener, you can use the code trampoline for 100 pounds off Stride 1 and 30% off any other individual Stride tests and supplements. If you are exploring what's possible, Stride gives you a clearer map. Visit getstride.com and keep moving with purpose. Endurance Capital is brought to you by Trampoline Venture Partners. I'm Ignacio Garcia. Thanks for listening. See you on the next episode. Okay, thank you so much.